Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Williams. I'm a staff writer here at Tech World, also right across Computer World UK and CIO UK. Today we are going to be going through the tech venture capitals, female specifically, how the industry is developing, and we have with us here Suki Fuller, who is a pioneer, a great woman in that industry. So please introduce yourself, Suki.
So, hi, my name's Suki Fuller. I am the CEO and co-founder of Salon Ventures, and I call myself an analytical storyteller because I'm also, by profession, an intelligence specialist.
It's great, lovely to have you here with us. So firstly, can you just tell me a bit about your career today and how exactly you ended up in venture capital?
So, I don't think anybody's career is linear. So mine is very much non-linear and very much not your typical person that gets into venture. So originally started out in chemical engineering. I did not do very well in that. Had a thing about closed windows and rooms, which is why I like this room, lots of windows. But didn't do very well academically in staying in that industry. Worked for a little bit, but not so much. Then I moved into intelligence. So I became an intelligence practitioner across national security, law enforcement, and corporate. And then, just by way of chance, I fell into venture. And while I still do competitive intelligence, I do also do venture. And that was quite an accident, just knowing lots of people that worked within the social media space in the early days of Twitter and blog world and all sorts of things that were going on in the US around the mid to late, what was that? 2006? So the mid to early 2006, 2007 when Twitter started is really when I jumped into more of the tech sector.
Yeah, that's great, lovely. So how would you say the industry's changed since the beginning of your career?
I would say technology is very much fueling what's going on within the business world. Everybody, to some degree, can say their company is a tech company because if you have a business online or you're doing e-commerce, everybody is now claiming they're a tech company. And I would say that while there is a lot more acceptance of tech, there is still sort of this pie in the sky looking at it as though it can fix and change everything in the world, when in fact it comes down to the people, really is about what the people are doing and how they're designing the tech, whether or not it solves a real problem.
That's really interesting. And going back from what you've mentioned, so you've been in technology industry for quite some years and also now developed into venture capital. So how would you say that, what's the importance of diversity and inclusion in the industry? And that's not just on moral grounds, that's like for the success of the business.
Okay, so I always try not to use the word diversity anymore. I really do try to use the word variety. And that is mainly because the majority of people that have, we can say, the power, have a tendency to kind of close their eyes and roll their eyes the minute you say diversity. And diversity itself, the word, has become very diluted. So you have people that, when you say diversity, they just think gender. And for me, I always think of the threes. I have threes. I like the number three, apparently. And I always think of equality as being gender. And while we know there are people that don't really identify with any gender that are non-binary, I was just, in order to explain it to people in a very simplistic manner, I say equality is men and women. It's what you're born. And while you can change that after the fact, that's, just your biological state when you're born. And then diversity, or variety as I like to call it, is the things that are attributed to you. So there are, your race, that's diversity, that's variety, because everybody's human, just different types of us. And then inclusion are the things that anybody can have. Anybody can be blind, anybody can be deaf, anybody can have any sort of mental disorder. Those are the most simplistic terms, and that's how I explain it so that people can understand the basic level. And also, I think it helps with explaining it to young children when they are coming into that age of awareness that there are things that are different. Yeah. So whenever we're speaking to children and we're talking about getting into tech, we put it on that baseline, and then they really have some sort of cognitive understanding of what those differences are.
That's really interesting. So what more could be done to improve that then? I know you've really gone into in depth and said that there is more to it than just the diversities. There's more that meets the eye. But what more can be done to improve? We know, and I'm sure you do very well as well, there is not enough female founders being invested in, and there also is not enough females noticed as VC investors. So what more can be done, and are things getting better?
That's an inflammatory question, because I mean, it depends on the day. I mean, sometimes you wake up and you think, oh, this is really bad. You know, nothing's changing. You know, it's 0.2%, not even I think it's 0.02 for women of color, and it's 2% just for women in general. And it's like, that hasn't changed. It actually kind of got a little worse. But at the same time, once again, back to my threes. Well, I run this thing called the 50-50 Pledge with a friend of mine, Chris Tottenham from Notion, and he is a white 50-year-old male VC. And we run this initiative, and it's about getting more women into VC. Okay. It's about, you know, making the numbers more equal. That's great. And one of the things that we have is called the awareness, the advocacy, and the action. And that also ties in with the Tech London Advocates Women in Tech initiative. And those are our 3 A's. So that's worked across board, because awareness is, once you raise the awareness of somebody, they can't say they didn't know. Yeah. And there's enough publicity out there. There's enough initiatives by governments, by nonprofits, by global organizations talking about women, female entrepreneurship, how we improve those numbers, that there are more women in the world than there are men. So why are we not having more capital? And so people know there's an awareness. If you choose not to be aware, you're basically just putting your blinders on to keep your power. And then you have the advocacy. And once you're aware, you either go 2 ways. There's maybe 3 ways. You're either going to be somebody who just doesn't care, so you're not going to advocate for change because you have too much power. You don't want to give it up. Or there's people in the middle that just sort of go either way, depending on the day. And usually for men, in general, for men, it usually is once they become fathers or they have a significant female in their lives as an adult other than their mother, all of a sudden they become very much aware and they start advocating because they realize they see it within their own family. Then you have those that are, always advocates. Since birth, they've always been like, I've had a strong mother, or I've had a mother and I've seen how hard she worked. I have sisters, I've seen the struggle that they've gone through. And so you have those 3 types of people that are in that middle where they're advocating. They either are, they aren't, or they're just kind of meh, I'll do it whenever it's appropriate for me. And then you have action. And action comes down to the people that have said, I'm aware, I'm advocating, and I'm going to help take action because this is not right. And that's where I think we are right now in society. I think looking back over the last few years, there was definitely more of an awareness around women, female entrepreneurs, about how things were changing, how the changes need to come about. And in the US, I would say that was more around in the area of politicians. You could see it happening with Hillary Clinton's campaign, even though there were other people before her that, campaigned for the presidency, but it was the fact that her sort of visibility was a lot higher. And so that raised really very much more awareness. And then in the UK, you see it with, even though we've had a British Prime Minister, we had Margaret Thatcher, it was sort of always there, but it was always very much more class driven. Yeah. But you see it now in business. And we had our own little drama about the BBC and about the pay differential. So you've seen the changes. And just probably in the last year, you see more advocacy, more female networks rolling up, more people talking about why are women not getting investing. And then also this last year, end of last year and this year, you see more action. People are saying, especially us women, we're saying, that's great you have a report. That's great you have an initiative. We're still not getting money. You still have the same people sitting in the boardroom. And it really needs to be the people that are writing the checks, that are deciding who gets the money. It needs to be more inclusive. It needs to have women. It needs to have people of color. It needs to have people that have disabilities. It needs to have people that are different in the way that they think, that are neurodiverse. That needs to happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I really particularly like what you mentioned about the awareness as well. I was recently talking to a founder of a startup venture company called Fuel Ventures. And they mentioned how they've decided to go through anonymous pitch decks. So that's basically just scratching out completely unconscious bias. So they will not even see the image or the name of the founder that comes into the company until they actually get through to the stage of coming in for the meeting. But the question I was asking, I was thinking, should it actually have to get to that stage? The fact that, fine, you're doing something positive, you've realized that there could be that unconscious bias, but why should we have to even get to that? Why can we not say, okay, whether you're a male or female, whether you're a black female or a white male, we just like your business idea, so we just want to invest in your company. So what do you think about that? Do you think that that action that you mentioned rightfully as well is happening and it's taking a good turn? Or can't we just carry on being traditional? And
I don't know. When you say traditional, the thing is, tradition has always been dictated by the person or the people that have power. And so it hasn't been inclusive from the beginning. But that's in any structure. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. I always look at it like this. If you go to China, which is a very homogeneous society, people that are different. So if you're a white female with blonde hair, you are considered, it's like kind of people stare at you. If you're a black female, people will stare at you. And if you are in Tanzania and you're a white male, people are going to stare at you. Maybe not so much, but people will stare at you because you are different. And in those societies, you're actually seen as the minority. Whereas when you're in more of the Western countries like the US, like Canada, the UK, as a person of color, you are viewed as the minority. So it really is about those societal norms in those sort of different cultures. But at the same time, unconscious bias, I hate that phrase. And while I understand why people blind, I don't think it's very effective, because if an idea is good, it doesn't matter who pitches it. And I'm like, there are nuances in a business that are there because of the experience of the person that built the company. And so you can have somebody come along and pitch a really great idea and go, it's really good, but there's something missing here, because it really is also about the person. I don't know, I'm still a little bit on the line about blinding because I can understand taking out somebody's name if they're applying for a job, but when it comes down to a company, there is something about the ethics behind the person. There is also something about how they came to fund that company, how they came to found that company, how it's about their life experience. And that goes into giving you more insight of how that company is going to grow. Whereas if you don't know anything, it can always look perfect on paper.
That's really interesting. So for yourself and for the company, what sort of companies do you guys like to invest in? And what's your strategy for the year ahead?
So we're really early stage. I'd say we're more angels than anything, and we're more connectors. So because we don't have big pockets, we haven't raised around ourselves. We're trying to avoid that, because then we're beholden to other people. But we have a tendency to focus on health, mainly because that's probably one of the areas where people don't fund as much. They do, but not early stage, because it is one of those where, so we do health tech. We've done beauty, but usually all natural beauty, like my lipstick. Liz Cosmetics, shout out. And food, healthy food. We have a tendency to sort of focus on more of the natural side of things. And of course, I have a love for deep tech, as you do. And so I really am working more with looking at AI, deep learning, machine learning, really the things that are driving technology, the ethics behind that, making sure that it's more empathetic, making sure that it's more inclusive. We don't need any more soap dispensers that don't recognize people of color's hands. You know, we need to make sure those are inclusive from the beginning, that, you know, your app on your phone is good for somebody who has vision problems, that, you know, that so a device has Braille on it. You know, all those things that really people don't think about. You know, the next Google Glass is actually developed for people with an eye impairment versus just somebody who wants to look cool. You know, those are the things that we're really looking at.
That's really, really good. And in that sense as well, so is there a criteria that you guys have for the founding team, or are you pretty open with that?
We're pretty open. We do like to have more inclusive teams. So we have, if you have an all-male team, the first question is going to be, why don't you have any other members on your team that are not male? Because when you're developing something for any industry, you should have a more inclusive team, because you're going to get insights that you won't get as a male founder. Even if you're developing a razor for a guy, you know, they have females on that team. Why? Because sometimes as a woman, you use the guy's razor. Sometimes, actually, they can give you more insight on people that have more sensitive skin, because there are men that have sensitive skin. So, you know, if a woman uses it, they'll be like, oh, this doesn't really work too well for people with sensitive skin. Just more insight.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Thank you very much. You've definitely answered all my questions and given me a great insight. So thank you very much for your time.
You're quite welcome. Thank you very much for having me.